Welcome to the Daily Grind. I am not. I'm Mark. That's not Luke. Sean's back with me again. Second show in a row. What's going on, man?
What's up, man? Good getting to talk with you. This is like old times for those who may not remember. Me and Mark for about 6 months. It was I think Mark multiple times, at least a couple of times a month, said that besides the marriage to his wife and the birth of his kids, it was the best 6 months of his life when he got to host a regular show with me on a nearly daily basis. But this was back in 2020, I believe. But Mark, it's good to be back with you. I could be lying on those memories, so we could remember it.
No. For those who missed it, Sean and I were the host. I did Locked On Grizzlies for several years. There was a point in time where it was Sean and myself, and then Sean took it over from there. And it was a great show. We always had a lot of fun doing it. So this is
The perfect pandemic pairing is how I like to call us, because those first few months of the pandemic, we got we got each other through some tough times without basketball.
That's what I was told. That's what it was the perfect pandemic pairing. That is what I heard on reviews and everything of the like. Great show for you guys today. Obviously, we got big news with the Steve-O news last night. If you missed it, Sean and I did an emergency show last night, kind of a special edition of the Daily Grind. It's on the YouTube channel. You can check that out. We kind of go in depth on the trade itself. We will still go over the trade again, just for those who missed it. We will talk a little bit more. I think there are a little bit more fine details that came out of the trade this morning. So we will discuss that in the second segment. Last segment, previewing the Warriors Grizzlies tonight. But first, the Grizzlies did play a game last night. They did lose to the Cavs. Thoughts on the games last night?
It's another game where the Grizzlies did a very good job early on. Jerry was finding his success. We were seeing Santi Aldama, who Chris Harrington and Jeffrey Wright on 92.9. They had a great conversation this morning, and I think Chris Harrington summed it up pretty well. That Santi has been shooting well as of late. He definitely has a 60% true shooting percentage, nearly 50% on his threes, averaging 11 shots, 5 threes a game. So he did well. So that front court pairing really showed up last night. But in the second half, what just simply came down to it this time was that you had Cleveland with Donovan Mitchell and Max Strus and Sam Merrill and others. Listen, Cleveland just went into the fourth quarter just being like, listen, we're going to bomb away, and we feel strongly that you're not going to have enough offense to be able to match our ability to shoot threes. And that's exactly what occurred. At the end of the night, Donovan Mitchell is Donovan Mitchell. I know that Jaren had a mismatch opportunity late in the game with Jared Allen out, but at that point we weren't hitting threes, and we weren't getting that contribution besides Santi last night really from anywhere. Trey Jemison did good in his few minutes, but you also had Gigi Jackson, David Roddy, I believe, a combined 4 for 26 last night as well. So we just didn't have enough offense. Our defense was good once again, but what's becoming clear is that for this team, even when they have a good offensive night, the ceiling of this offense right now is between 100 and 110 points. And when you're facing a team like Cleveland, even if you're able to knock them down a few pegs, they're still going to have the three-point shooting to be able to beat us. So that's what showed up last night. And listen, I want to win these games. You didn't have as egregious of a coaching decision cost you like you did Monday night. But at the end of the day, if they remain competitive and just wind up losing at the end just because you don't have the offensive upside right now, you just got to accept that with this roster right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I said this on whatever show we had after the Kings game, even if you don't have kind of what we think is a bad decision, by Taylor Jenkins, like, at the end of the day, sometimes those teams just make shots, right? Like, that's kind of what it boils down to. And that's really what the Kings did too, like, late in the game. Yeah, Jaren could have been out there, and even if he was out there, they could have still made those 2 threes in a row and pushed it to 6 like really easily, and within 25 seconds of each other. And so I think that's what you saw last night as well. I mean, like you mentioned, the defense played well, and then eventually late in the fourth quarter, the Cavs defense tightened up too. I mean, they really packed the paint and just kind of forced everything outside, which is kind of what I thought they'd do anyway. And in reality, you have guys like Gigi Jackson who have been up and down. And last night I would say would be a down for him in terms of his shooting and his offense. And we've seen we saw more of that lately than we have seen of the MLK Day game. And that's the reality is you got guys like Gigi Jackson who are 2-way guys in the last minutes of a game of a crucial game where you're in it. And you're relying on those guys to sometimes make shots, and they're not Donovan Mitchell, right? Like that's just the reality of the situation. You look across the way and you got Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell making shots, and it's tough. I mean, it's not. There's not a lot more you can ask for the team. Like you mentioned, that there's a cap, there's a ceiling to this offense, and right now when you're rolling out Scottie Pippen Jr. As your starting point guard, and you have John Contra as your starting wing. And you coming off the bench of J.D. Jackson, Jacob Wheeler, and David Roddy, and then another 10-day guy in Trey Jemison. I don't know what more you're gonna kind of expect from them. To be clear, I'm happy they were in the game. I'm happy it was a good game. That's all I care about. As long as it was fun to watch, you see some development from your guys. That's kind of where I'm at on it. What did you think of Trey Jemison last night?
Instant impact. And what I mean by instant impact is he's an energy big, and we seem to have that. I don't necessarily know if the skill's there for him to, ever really be as much as a third big in the league. I'm not going to sit there and put that type of expectations, but there was activity. And more than that, it just wasn't going through the motion. There was determined activity. Like, for instance, when he, got his first bucket, Kelsey talked about it after the game, that he had he was so excited about his first NBA bucket, and also the block on Jarrett Allen. He's focused and determined with his actions instead of just being out there going through the motion. So, is he more than a 10 to 15 minute big? Probably not. But he does seem like he's someone that is focused on the opportunity and can show some good productivity off the bench against other, teams' bench lineups. And I think that's what you need right now. You need another big who can do exactly that. So I was certainly impressed. And one thing that I want to kind of modify a little bit is I say, you just kind of have to settle for what you're getting right now. I do think that, when we talk about Taylor Jenkins, and, we talked about obviously his decision from Monday night, which I think everybody can, he himself hinted at, it probably wasn't the best decision. But one thing that I will say is that, hey, in that fourth quarter, if you see that Gigi, you see that Roddy don't have it, Gigi was still able to create some opportunities, shifting those shot opportunities, getting a bit more creative to get Santi or get Vince or someone else, those shots, that could be a way where you could get the offense going, certainly. But yeah, in terms of Jemison and in terms of Scottie Pippen, these new insertions of productivity and energy at areas that we've needed it. I'd say the returns last night for Jemison were certainly positive, and I've also liked what I've seen from Scottie Pippen as well.
Yeah, I as well. I mean, the weird Xavier Tillman not being able to play during the middle of the game was strange. So I guess sometimes that happens. I haven't really seen it happen often, but that's weird. But again, I'm with you. Like, and to be clear about Trey Jemison, and to your point, there's always going to be need for a third big on a team, right? Like, there's a lot of guys who made their living being a third big on the team or being a role player, so, while you say that, and I don't want anybody to think that's a slight to Trey Jemison in any way. Like, sometimes that's just your ceiling. I mean, we kind of see it with Xavier Tillman. That is kind of his ceiling as well. I mean, that's where he kind of is destined to live in this NBA. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can make a very long career and a lot of money just doing that, doing that. And so I thought Trey Jemison was good on defense, and that's really kind of what I was looking for. I wasn't really looking to see if he was going to have it offensively, quote unquote. I think he's a guy much like Xavier that's just going to be around the rim, clean up misses, rebound the ball, and be available, when you need him in terms of just pocket passes and things like that. I'm not thinking you're looking for him for offense, but just as a guy in terms of playing defense, being able to be big, that's kind of his number one priority right now.
Absolutely. And the whole thing about the Grizzlies is just go out there and do something, right? Like, I think that's what really stands out is, giving these guys the opportunity, especially on offense, to just take advantage of being able to score. We do need structure. We do need strategy besides go get a bucket, Jaren, or, Vince Williams doing what he can to adapt to the offense, or Gigi kind of, doing what he can as well. We need other sources that, when they get the ball in their hands, they're doing something positive with it. And you certainly got that feeling from Jemison last night. So I think that we're starting to see, this is the first, need to see it for a few more games. I do think that this could be more than just a 10-day signing, kind of like you felt like with Shaq Harrison and Jalen Noel. I think that there could be a possibility, especially with him lasting after the trade deadline, where the Grizzlies could find a way to keep him around if they have multiple open roster spots after the trade deadline.
Yeah. Again, overall, I thought it was a productive game. You saw a lot from different players. Scottie Pippen Jr. continues to impress in terms of just what, within his confines of his game. And I think that's obviously why it was interesting to see that he's now, kind of playing over Jacob Giller, which I expected. I think a lot of people expected, but his ability to get to the rim, his size offers a lot more variance, if you will, than Jacob Gilliard. So him continue to be good and impresses was good to see as well.
Absolutely. And the big thing overall is that right now it's process versus results. If it's not going to happen with Roddy and Zaire, at this point, it's hard to expect that to occur. Just continuing to see consistency out of Vince and Gigi and getting these spurts where you can, see Scottie Pippen, Trey Jemison, and others, showing value. I think that's certainly a positive. You'd love to see it from Zaire and Roddy, just hasn't happened consistently. But as long as you're getting it from multiple sources other than Jaren right now with the setup that we have, I think that that's what you're really setting as your standard of was this a successful game or not over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let's get to a break. We're going to be right back. We're going to talk about what everybody probably wants to talk about. That's the Steve-O trade to the Rockets. We'll do a little bit more on that in the next segment. Again, we did a whole show, 30 minutes on this last night, so we're not going to go super in deep because we've already done this last night, but we will continue to get the finer details of the trade. So we'll talk about that coming up next.
Not just the level of individual talent that he plays with, but it's also the level of his mind. We haven't gotten cross-court open shot this year. Right. We haven't seen that pass a lot. Number one, you got to respect him going to the basket. There's a roller. I got to watch the roller. He has the mind to be able to say, I see all of that, but now I see this guy over here. I'm going to get him this open shot. How shifty he is to always be going forward. It's usually side to side. Yeah. His dribble moves are side to side, but going forward. Right. Which is very hard to defend. I just want to get you, as many times can I get you to do this? But for him, it's not here. It is here, which is with are his moves to get down the floor. It's awkward for a defender to try to catch a cadence. You dribble. So now what I do is now when you go put that ball down, I'm going for it. But with him, it's hard for my cadence. But what's my cadence for you? I don't know what it is.
Tune in to the Anthony Sane Show Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Who do you need to step it up? Outside of David Jones, I think David Jones is David Jones.
I don't think you need him to step it up because he's been performing.
Yeah, he's David Jones. Outside of him, he's fine.
I think Quinterly needs to play better.
In what way? He's facilitating the ball well. What do you, I don't.
To a 12 from the field's not cutting it.
It's not great. It's not great.
And I don't need a runner three from the top of the key with 3.5 seconds left.
Is Virginia the game where Jordan Brown is going to cook? Those dudes aren't looking to run the ball.
Cook what? Dude, I thought he was going to have a freaking night. He came out with that fresh cut, lined up, and then literally within the first 15 seconds missed a wide open layup, and then picked up 2 fouls right away.
I feel real lied to because I thought we were getting a 20 and 10 guy.
Didn't think it did anything for you.
Well, I think
we all thought we were getting a 20 and 10 guy. And we are getting that in David Jones.
I'm not even getting 20 or 10 minutes out of the guy.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Welcome back to the Daily Grind. We are here with Sean Coleman, my good buddy, over at Bluff City Media. If you haven't already done so, go subscribe to the Bluff City Media YouTube page. I promise you it's worth it. Lots of good shows. There's something for everybody. This show, our post-game show for Tigers and or Grizzlies. We have a soccer show. We have just kind of more national shows where Gabe and Christian talk just all kinds of stuff, MMA, what have you. Promise you there's more for there's something for everybody. So take a minute. Go subscribe to the YouTube channel over at Bluff City Media. It's worth it. Let's get to this segment. Steve-O traded to the Rockets last night. Steven Adams traded for 3 second-round picks and Victor Oladipo, which is his contract matching. Again, Sean and I did an emergency show last night. If you haven't seen that, go check that out from last night. It kind of goes really, really in detail of just the specifics of the trade. Finer details came out today. I think I saw, Sean, they are taking Steven Adams into the disabled player exception created by Ja Morant, which, if you guys know, probably if you don't know, it's kind of CBA stuff that's weird and you don't have to know this, but they're taking that contract into the traded player or the disabled player exception created by Ja Morant, which can only be used by a guy traded for the last year of his contract. So this was actually very unique. I actually didn't expect them to use this at all, but I don't know, Sean, do you have any insight on what that does for the team going forward?
Yeah, basically what it does is that it allows for them to, it was Victor Oladipo's, I believe, $9.5 million, the second year of his, 2-year contract, $9.5 million. They put that into Ja Morant's, what was a $12.6 million disabled player exception. And so they can only use it for one player. Even if they don't use the whole amount, they can only use it for one player. But basically, and I may be inaccurate on this, but I'll try to sum it up and stay as general as possible. That basically means that they're not taking on, any salary that's counting towards this year. And so since they traded out $12.5 million for Steven Adams this year, what this does is that by placing Oladipo in that disabled player exception and thus trading out Steven Adams $12.5 million, the Grizzlies did this because it allows for them to get creative about keeping a trade exception now for $12.5 million up until next year's deadline. So basically what they've done is that they've set up an outlet for, say we go into next year, we're relatively healthy, but someone, pretty significant to our rotation goes down again with an injury. Well, now we could use that trade exception. You're going to have to make sure you have a roster. You're going to have assets to trade for, but we could go out and get someone up to that 10 to 12 million mark who then wouldn't count against the cap. And for a team that is now very focused with their core getting so expensive about making sure that they have flexibility up against that cap, which was a significant reason why they moved on from Steven Adams' contract next year, they now basically have created that same type of contract space to where it would not count against the cap next year. So, they may not use it. They've not always used these trade exceptions, but they did come up with a creative way to add talent in case they needed it if they were to run into, once again, injuries next year. That, on top of the second round injuries, getting another expired contract with Oladipo, maybe they could use it in another trade. Listen, we could go back and forth about the reasons why the Grizzlies traded Steven Adams, why he made sense to trade among others. But one of the biggest reasons why is because on 2, 3, 4 different fronts, the Grizzlies got in a more positive position moving forward. And I find it hard to believe there was another option in a singular player that could have allowed for that other than Steven Adams to the Rockets. And so that's ultimately why they did it.
Yeah, I think, again, this is something we talked about last night. The flexibility is what you want as a Grizzlies fan. And this trade, it can get very complicated very quickly because it deals a lot with really unique and finite CBA dealings with exceptions and things like that. The long and short of it, all you need to know is this was a money deal, right? This was a deal that the Grizzlies did to save money essentially going into next year because, like you mentioned, the core is getting very expensive. And so this is a deal they did to save money and get out of that kind of luxury tax second apron. If you don't know what that is, I promise you, we're going to talk about it enough. So every other show, you'll hear that term often. It is just there are levels to the tax bracket in the NBA. And once you get to each one, you can get less and less items. You get less mechanisms to use to sign players or to trade for players, et cetera, et cetera. It's just finite and we don't really need to get into it. But the TL, like the layman's, they did this deal for money saving purposes. That's really Victor Oladipo will never play for Memphis, although he's listed on the injury report tonight. Shout out Oladipo did miss a beat coming to Memphis, straight to the injury report. He knows he knows what we're about here. Since we did the show last night, it was immediate after the trade. It was literally 10 minutes after it happened. Have your thoughts changed at all since we were doing this almost 12, 15 hours later now that it was last night? Have you had any additional thoughts on the trade?
Well, yeah, and it's what's next, right? What stands out as being the next step for the Grizzlies, and I think what it is, it does focus on Steven Adams, Mark, and that everybody talks about just how much value Steven Adams added through the screens, through the offensive rebounds, through the defense, through the low usage of being able to support our stars. Is there a possibility he could get back to that? Possibly, but in likelihood, there's still a relative chance he may not. And if he does, it's likely not for 25 to 30 minutes a night. It's likely more in the 20-minute range a night, which means that he's more serviceable as a backup now than he is as a starter. One of your 5 best guys that you run out there 30 minutes a night. For a team like the Rockets, who do not have as much commitment to their core as of right now, but are looking to contend, they got him on the competitive timeline basically when we got him. They're hoping that he does for them what he did for us over the past 2 years before he got injured. And he's going to do that now in a backup role behind Şengün. So the fact that he's more of a backup center, making what he was going to make, that's why we moved on from him to the Rockets. I mentioned that because the Grizzlies now still have that probably 20 to 25-minute role that they need in a center. And so I think that what the Grizzlies did is that another reason why they did this, because you're uncertain that Steve-O could, be that starter. Well, now you shift him over, you get assets for him, take part of those assets perhaps and assets that you get from others, and maybe go get that 20-minute a night center that could allow for you to get that rebounding, screen setting, rim protection. I mentioned a guy like Nick Richards, who's going to be making $5 million next year and the year after that, can give you 20 minutes a night of those solid things, but also is a guy who you may not necessarily need to be that in that closing lineup. You could shift to where you've got Jaren and Clark, for instance, being in that closing lineup, or maybe even go smaller with Vince at the 4 in a closing lineup. I think what it comes down to is that another reason why the Grizzlies did this is that they've identified what role they need out of their traditional center. Steve-O was too expensive for that role in terms of their cap sheet. They moved on from him, got assets, and now can use part of those assets to get a cheaper version that can fill in that smaller need for a traditional center in distribution and production.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, again, I think that I don't think they're done. I don't think they're done before the trade deadline. I think they got a few more things to do. I think they're probably looking at some big swings. If they just don't work out, they'll probably still do some cleanup at the back of the roster, if I had to guess at this point in time. Speaking of the next week's trade deadline, we are doing a NBA trade special right here on Bluff City Media. We're going to be live all day long. So go look for that. We're going to make the YouTube page. You can favorite it and get a notification for it. We will have lots of guests next week from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. I think we have 9 guests scheduled. Sean, you're going to be on. I will be on hosting duties half of the day. Daniel Greer will be on hosting Dito's the next half of the day. So we'll have lots of local guests as well as some national guests as well. Talk about just all NBA trades as they're happening or ones that have happened led up to that. So I'll take a quick break. We're going to be right back. This Grizzlies Warriors game coming up tonight.
I'm just big on being able to vocalize what someone's role is. I always thought my best coaches were the people that let me know exactly what you expect from me. Now I might not like it. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Right. But if you come to me man to man to say, this is how we think we're gonna play you. Bang, 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 and hopefully everybody understands. I'm not saying that this has not been done with this team. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying from my experience, we all have egos when we get to this game. Right. All of us, to the last person on the bench, you got an ego, but all of us can't be the man. Yeah, you got to be able to say, okay, he's the man, but what do I do and what can I do to help us be good? And if it's vocalized to you, then you know exactly and if I'm out there doing it and now I'm not getting the result from you, now we got to sit down and have another conversation. Mm-hmm. But as long as it is told to you, this is what we expect from you, this is how we want you to play, then I feel like, again, keeping this logo. Right. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show, Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel. All right, Christian.
Yes.
You are Penny Hardaway.
I'm not.
Yes, you are.
Okay.
Today, you're going to play act, okay? Gabe, because you're a Jordan Brown apologist, you're going to be Jordan Brown.
I'm a Jordan Brown apologist. Okay.
Okay.
I'll take that.
Y'all are sitting across the room from each other.
I said, don't tweet him hate. And he's like, you're an apologist. Like, good God. But either way, continue. We're in a room together.
Why did things break down?
Jordan, we brought you in this year to be the centerpiece of our offense. You came in out of shape. Let's call it what it is. Call a spade a spade. We play fast. Told you this when we were recruiting you. We play fast. One of the fastest paces in the country. You have to be able to get up and down the floor. You have failed at that.
Oh, well, I'm leaving. So it's fine. Cool.
Tune in to On the Bluff with Christian Fowler and Gabe Kuhn every Tuesday at 12 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
Welcome back to the Daily Grind. It's just me. Sean Coleman had to drop out. He had some stuff to do. So we're going to finish up the last segment of the show, talking Warriors, Grizzlies right here on the Daily Grind. As I mentioned before, we did a whole show last night on the Steven Adams trade. So if you haven't seen that, go check that out. That will be literally as much as you need to know about the Steven Adams trade. I think we were on for like 35 minutes just talking about that. So go check that out. The Grizzlies take on the Warriors tonight. The Warriors are 20-24 in the Western Conference right now. And they're just above the Grizzlies. And so if you're still looking at the play-in game, the play-in race, which if you are, shout out to you, because I think a lot of us stopped looking at that a long time ago. But if you are, shout out to you. They are just ahead of us in kind of the standings and the Western Conference. The Grizzlies just released the injury report as we were talking in that last segment. Luke Kennard, Derrick Rose, both questionable tonight. So you would likely see those guys back. Xavier Tillman, doubtful. And like I mentioned, Victor Oladipo, straight to the injury report for the Grizzlies. He knows what we're about here. Waste no time getting there. He is obviously not going to be in any of the lineups. So, but Luke Kennard, Derrick Rose, getting those guys back would be huge. That means that you're going to have, some semblance of a starting lineup back with maybe Derrick Rose coming in for Scottie Pippen Jr., which honestly don't know if that's a good or a bad thing at this point. I don't know I'd assume Derrick Rose is better than Scottie Pippen Jr. Don't get me wrong. And that's probably what will happen. But Scottie Pippen Jr. has been very good, but I would likely see, Derrick Rose starting in that point guard position. I would be curious to see if they keep John Contra in the starting lineup, or they put Luke Kennard in the starting lineup, or maybe try to bring him off the bench for some reserve kind of shooting, reserve offense. But you'll likely see Scottie Pippen pushed to the bench. And I would be curious to see if Jacob Gilyard gets any run at all. My thought process would probably be no. I wouldn't think he gets any minutes now that you would have Derrick Rose and Luke Kennard both back, but still look for Gigi Jackson to continue to get minutes. Obviously David Roddy. And if Xavier Tillman is not going to go, which doesn't look like he is, Trey Jemison will probably you play that backup center role for the Grizzlies. But in terms of the Warriors, they have some of their own injuries to deal with that they have. Chris Paul is out, Darius Saric out. Draymond Green is day-to-day. He's probable for tonight, so he may or may not play. But, it's still a team that gets up shots. With Klay Thompson and Steph Curry, this team is 4th in the league in three-point attempts, 2nd in the league in three-point makes. They are 10th in three-point percentage, so they take a lot and they make a lot. It seems to be the theme of the teams that we've been playing lately, of teams that take a lot and make a lot, but that has been the theme the last 2 games for this Grizzlies kind of matchups. The good news is that they are not very good at defense. They are 22nd in the league in defensive rating. They are 10th in the league in offensive rating. That's a negative 0.2 for their net rating. So they're very good at defense. So I think the Grizzlies have a chance at this game if they're able to keep their defense high, like they have been over the past few games against the Kings, against the Cavs. Even though they lost those games, they still were able to keep their defense activity high. So I think you can expect that hopefully that we could be able to get a W. Again, like we talked about in the previous segment in our recap of the Cavs, like we talked about in the recap of the Kings. Obviously, the offensive ceiling has a ceiling for the Grizzlies. And so that's something to monitor as you go. If they make shots like they did in the first quarter of that Kings game, they make some shots like they did in that Cavs game and certain points and 3-point shots, and they're open. Santi did a great job of that. Hopefully he can continue that run of creating shots or creating space for Jaren. I think that's really important for him to be able to knock down those threes so that Jaren has a space to operate. If they can continue to make those 3-pointers, then obviously you're going to have a game. You're obviously going to have a chance to win. You're going to have a win. I know that's very obvious analytics. If you make you make shots, you're going to have a chance to win. But that's really kind of like what it boils down to a lot for this Grizzlies team, because they just don't have the guys. They don't have the offense sometimes. And so, I think with Luke Kennard back, Derrick Rose back, you have Santi back in the lineup, you have a lot of your guys that can provide some offensive firepower. Derrick can score. Luke can score 15 on any given night, 20 on any given night. He goes for 4 from 5 from 3, 4 from 6 from 3. He's able to do that on any given night. And so this Golden State team is not a great defensive team. They're good on the perimeter. They don't allow a ton of 3-point shots. They're mediocre in that area. So it's not something they look to guard, or look to push you out to do. Like a few of the other teams were willing to let you, shoot 3-pointers, and the Kings and the Cavs. That's not something where they excel. They were really going to pack the paint. This Warriors defense is just average across the board. Their stat categories, pretty average. What they're good at on offense, they're good on defense as defensive rebounding, top 10 in the league in defensive rebounding, total rebounding, top 5 in the league in total rebounds. So that's something tonight you'll really look for. Trey Jemison, hopefully he can help with that, but the Grizzlies will have to continue to try to team rebound like with Vince Williams and John Conchar, like they've been doing, the last month, it feels like anyway. So those are the type of things you want to look for against this Grizzlies Warriors game. I do think the Grizzlies could probably win this game. It's not like, the last few games we've been talking about the Kings and the Cavs. Those are games where we're just like, look, if you're in the game, great. If you're in the game, a hope and a prayer is all you're wishing for, and just have a good game. I think this is a game you can actually go and win. I really do. I know a lot of Grizzlies fans, especially against the Warriors, would have this circled, have it marked, and would want to win this game just because it's the Warriors no matter what. But I do think all things aside, I think you can win this game. I don't think this Warriors team is that good. I think you put Vince Williams obviously on Steph Curry. Klay Thompson, I think, is not as good as he once was. I think everybody kind of has that opinion. But you put Vince Williams on Steph Curry, you put John Conchar on Klay Thompson, and hopefully you hope for the best in terms of slowing those guys down. As Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, sometimes they're going to get on a heater, and you're not going to be able to slow them down and just do your best. But I think Vince Williams is a guy that can do that. You've shown that over the last 2 months, guarding the opposite team's best player is something he takes pride in. It's something he can do well. And so I think, obviously it starts on the Grizzlies defensive side and keeping that defense high and hoping your shots go in and hoping your guys, that's not Jaren Jackson Jr., hoping your guys can continue to make shots like they did against the Cavs. I think they had that showing against the Cavs with that offense. I think that's a W tonight for the Grizzlies. But either way, we'll be back next week with a whole new slew of shows. Like I mentioned, we'll be doing our NBA trade special next Thursday all day long. So tune in for that. We'll be at next week every day at 1:00. Luke will be back as well. And we will have Daily Grind just like we do every day. We'll see you then.